Welcome to the Win-Win Evangelism podcast. My name's Tina Waldrom from Evangelism in Australia. I am very excited today. We're talking about Jesus Film as an outreach tool. It's amazing. It's going to be released in Australia in Christmas 2026. And today I'm talking to Geoff Folland, and he is the National Director of Power to Change. It's so exciting. Let's get into it. Let's talk about it. Welcome to you, Geoff.
Thank you, Tina. It's great to be able to talk to you about the Jesus film.
Fantastic. My understanding is that you took on the new national role with Power to Change in January, and it was a bit of a story that you're just trying to get settled in, and Jesus Film arrived on your desk, so to speak. Tell us what happened and why on earth did you say yes?
Thanks, Tina. I was preparing to take on the role of national director at the beginning of the year, and so in September last year, I was in Auckland for a gathering of our regional leaders for Campus Crusade, and at that meeting there was a presentation about the Jesus film, and they said there's this new film coming out. It's going to be amazing cinema quality animation version of the original film, reimagining of the original film. It's going to be released in cinemas in 34 countries in 100 different languages. And they said to me, Geoff, does Australia want to be involved? And I thought to myself, do I really have a choice? You know, if a global organization is releasing a film like this with, Jesus Film globally has 1,800 mission organizations that they partner with. If we have all of this happening around it, the borders to Australia aren't strong enough to hold it out if I say no. And I said I could either be the little boy standing on the beach with my hand up saying, no, I'm the new national director, I'm too busy, as the tsunami comes crashing towards us, or I can turn the surfboard around and start paddling like crazy to try and catch the momentum. And so I had to make the choice. And so as soon as I said, yes, we're in, then God started to inspire me with all sorts of ideas and questions. I said, oh, so there's a film coming. What can we do with it? Can we, if it's Christmas, can we get life-size nativity sets, based on the characters from the film? Could we get trading cards, collectible cards that we get, where there's characters on the front and on the back is a QR code linking to a website where people can see it. Can we do, and I just started thinking about all these different possibilities. And they said, Geoff, you're so excited about the film. We want to come and hear about these ideas and work out a strategy. And so the week before I became national director, three of the global leaders for Jesus Film came, and we spent 3 long days locked in the boardroom talking about what is the strategy, what are we trying to do. They had 20 people from across the ministry on Zoom, and I had our Australian team, some of the team here locally, to work out what we're going to do. And they said there's really 2 parts to the film. The first part is that there is the launch phase. What can we do to in the cinema launch to actually allow as many people as possible to hear the story of Jesus? And then the second part is, how do we actually use this as a ministry tool for making disciples in evangelism and discipleship? And so our whole strategy from then has been to think about what do we want to do with those 2 phases.
It's such a great opportunity. I mean, it's extraordinary to have a film of this caliber, and not a remake, but just explain, because I know there's going to be people listening to us that haven't heard of Jesus Film. There's lots that have, but there was a Jesus Film released in 1979. So what is the connection, and how did it go back then? And, what are those connections today?
So the original Jesus Film was made in 1979, shot on location in Israel, and the whole content is simply the Gospel of Luke. It's the words of the Gospel of Luke. And we know in Australia, even in Australia, that there's been a rising level of interest in faith-based films and even faith-based shows like The Chosen, and The Chosen is incredible. But it's a series that's designed for a particular audience. What the Jesus Film was just the Gospel of Luke, and so by limiting ourselves to the actual texts of the Gospel, then it allowed it to be used broadly by anybody who believes the Gospel of Luke and follows the Gospel of Luke's story. So Uh, in Australia, there was originally a release and showing in cinemas, and I met guys like a guy by the name of Murray, who had the reels and a projector in the back of his car and drove out to country towns, both in Victoria. And I heard about this happening in New South Wales and other places as well. And they'd set up in a town hall and let people come and watch it then. But then in the 1990s, the Jesus film started to be translated into different languages. And so in Australia in the 1990s, we were partnering with local churches to door knock their neighborhoods and give away the original Jesus film in a VHS and eventually then a DVD format in 100 different languages, reaching out to these rapidly growing migrant communities as we move to become a very multicultural country. And so in the 1990s, in that project, we gave away or partnered in partnership with churches 750,000 copies of the original
Wow.
Jesus film. Since then, Jesus Film globally has partnered with these 1,800 mission organizations being used to plant churches and grow churches in countries all over the world. And the film has been viewed, shown on television and so on. And it's been viewed 11 billion times, seen hundreds of millions of people come to faith, and just crossed being translated into 2,100 languages. So it's the most watched, most translated film in the history of the world. But a couple of years ago, we realized, after the 1990s wave passed, we realized that people in Australia don't tend to watch 1979 films anymore. It doesn't matter what, it's great to have the languages, but the actual film isn't really cutting it for us. And so they experienced the same thing in the US and in Western Europe. And so there was a move to reimagine how might we present the same story, the Gospel of Luke, to a new audience. And the idea has came back that we can create it as a animated version. And so they've got this animated. This is just a brochure, the front page of a brochure, giving you a bit of an idea of the animation quality. You can go to our website, jesus.film, and it will show you a clip of what we're aiming for, and a bit of the story as well. But and so again, so it's an animation, and the great thing about the animation is, again, it's fresh, it's a reimagining of the story, but it's going to allow us to map all the audio recordings we have onto the new film. And so the new film, when it comes out, they'll do a re-recording of the English audio, but using AI and other technology, we'll be able to it'll be released in 100 languages in Australia, and then quickly mapped to with all the other 2,100 languages. So it's going to be phenomenal. It's going to be
Yeah.
phenomenal.
It's going to be an amazing tool. And we're talking about a quality of film. How much is the film costing? Because we're not talking about an amateur production. Geoff, just tell us a
No.
little bit about that.
So they've got the budget of $150 million. That's what they're US dollars. They're in the process of raising that. They're almost halfway towards raising that. If anyone has a spare $1 million they want to throw in, I'm sure they'd love to hear from you, because they're doing the hard work of raising the funds. My wife and I were in Florida, in Orlando, back in April, and we got to go to visit the studio where they're where they're producing the film. And I thought film studio, like Warner Brothers or Fox Studios or something, it's going to be this great big lot with sound. It's like, no, this is an animated film. All the sets are on a computer, and so you walk in, it's just this two-story brick building with computers, and animators who are working virtually all around the world. It's a very humble and unassuming kind of setup, but they've got the professional animators from people from Disney and Pixar. The Dominic, who's the director, has worked on I can't remember if it was Mulan or one of those kind of films. These are guys who are top level professionals creating a cinema quality animated film, and they're using it as a platform for building the sets in this virtual world. They're using a thing called Unreal Engine, which is what the game Fortnite is built in. And so I've seen some of these sets where they are going into incredible detail about to recreate the scenes just as Jesus would have walked through. And I saw their set for Capernaum, and I've done an Israel study tour. I've walked through the ruins of Capernaum. and and I've seen the type of rocks there. And if you do a Google map search, you can go down and have a look at the, what does this actually look like? And then I compared that with the set they've created. And I'm like, this is not ruins. This is what Capernaum would have looked like 2,000 years ago. And so we've they've got the potential in the future after the film's released that they'll be able to set up games or other ways where you can put on VR goggles and actually walk into the sets, walk the streets where Jesus walked in a way that you couldn't do now, even if you went on an authentic Israel study tour, which of course we know at the moment with the current political climate is very dangerous. So
It
yeah.
just sounds absolutely incredible, Geoff, and a great tool. So I'm starting to think already, and let's talk about this, how that churches or groups
Mhm.
can actually engage with the film, because my understanding is the best first step, because there is so much expertise and the product will be so great that it needs to be seen in a cinema as its first base, to get the best effects
That's right.
from it. So, how do we do that? How can we start thinking as churches and large groups towards that?
Mm.
What are you wanting for people to do to be able to engage with this the most as an outreach tool?
Yeah. Well, I think, as I said before, there's really two parts. There's the cinema launch, and then there's the ongoing use of the tool afterwards. And I would argue that the credibility of the use of the film afterwards will be enhanced if we do a large cinema launch,
Hmm.
And so, so the question is, how do we maximize the number of people who get to go see the story, the film, the story of Jesus, the Jesus film? And and my conviction is, I want people who don't know the story of Jesus to go see it and to experience it. And I don't want them to experience it just by going by themselves. I want them to go as part of a Christian community. And so it would be wonderful if local churches could book a cinema. And I've done this when I was leading ministry on campus. I'd book a cinema. We had Ross Matthews from Real Dialogue talk to us at our launch events about the impact of inviting people who aren't Christians, who probably wouldn't want to come to a church, but are happy to go to the cinemas to come and watch this film. And and so having a church book a cinema and actually plan and prepare and pray to take people with them to the cinema, to the events. And the band, the Christian band For King and Country, just did their tour of Australia, and it was a great concert. I love going to the concert, and at the end of their concert, they talked for a couple of minutes about the new film that they were just about to release called Unsung Hero. I don't know if you saw it, Tina,
Yeah,
but
it's amazing.
the it was a story of their move from Australia to Nashville, and after they'd done their tour, their concert tour, on just a few weeks' notice, their film release came out and it hit number 7 on the box office. Right? If we're talking about mobilizing the Christian community across Australia, what is the potential for the box office record for a film like this? It's quite incredible. And if you can maximize the standings, the publicity for it, the awareness of this film, then I think, as I said, it'll build credibility for the message forever afterwards. So I think if we can, I've said, if we can get local church to do it, and there are some churches I know who have congregations who meet and use different languages. So I know of a Baptist church near me where they've got multiple English congregations and they've got a Korean congregation, Cantonese, Mandarin. They'll all be able to book a cinema in and show the film in whatever language they want to do. And this can be an event that the whole church can gather around. And so we've imagined that about 150,000 ticket sales nationally is what is needed to appear on the box office charts. If there's about 100 people at each screening, so maybe 50 people who are Christians bring 50 people who are not yet believers, then we need 1,500 screenings during the course of the cinema run, which may only be 3 or 4 weeks.
Mm.
And and so if we have some churches who do one event and some churches who do multiple events, we're saying we need about 1,000 churches to get on board to get 1,500 screenings so that we can get the 150,000 tickets sold. But that's kind of my bare minimum for what God might do through this. If we have Christian schools who book cinema complexes and take their whole student body up to, during the day when no one else is going to, very few other people go and watch movies, they could just fill a cinema complex with multiple screens showing the Jesus film. And for many, we know many Christian schools, not all the students are believers. So for many of them, that it could be their first encounter or the really significant encounter they have with the story of Jesus.
Yeah, very true. So, I mean, it's a great time of the year for it to be released in that December of 2026. So, I guess as we're listening to this today, we've got to start to ask ourselves the question, and I'm asking myself the question, who is it in my local church that I could start to have discussions with about how we could facilitate this as we work towards December 2026 and the months beyond that. But I think the planning really does need to start now. I'm imagining also there could be some series that your church leaders could be doing in their churches that are leading up to that time of the release coming off their platforms, or smaller churches having studies and things, just even if it's around the Gospel of Luke, and starting to talk about how we can talk about with people that we already are doing life with, Geoff, that don't know Jesus
That's
yet.
right.
This would
That's
be the
right.
perfect opportunity to invite them.
That's right. Yeah, and I think this is a moment, and it's a line in the sand in terms of the cinema release, and so we need people. We want to be cultivating those relationships so that when the moment happens, that they're ready to hear the story of Jesus, and we trust that God will continue to work in their lives in the journey afterwards. The cinema release is just it's almost, this is what's going to cause us to have a sense of urgency that God is going to do something, and if it's and it's always easier for me I find it easier for me to talk to someone about Jesus if they've already been talking with someone else about Jesus, and if they've been hearing about Jesus through the media and promotions and advertising. And I think each church could do their own individual outreach, that'd be fine. But if you've got 1,000 churches all working on this campaign together, then the old saying that the rising tide lifts all boats. So I think we want to make the story of Jesus the issue in our Australian community in December 2026.
Absolutely. So something to put in our
And say,
calendars.
Tina, I know your background. You've been involved in organising, mission outreaches and campaigns, and many church leaders in Australia at the moment, they've not been involved in one. They actually don't know what's involved, and so. Just to say quickly that I think the three keys that we want to focus on. One is that the message, the story is credible. It's going to be conveyed in a way that we can trust. The second thing to say is that it's only going to work if we mobilize everyday Christians. Yes, we want pastors on board, but usually the pastors are busy, and we need people who are key volunteers. And Power to Change, we want to help train people to run these events if they need help. So we're going to provide logistical support behind the scenes, a structure, a way of booking cinemas and all the rest of it. But then the third thing and I would say that involves also evangelism training. And our surveys of pastors in Australia are that very few churches offer evangelism training. And how can we expect people to be engaged in building relationships with others and having spiritual conversations if we don't teach them how to do it? If you get a job and nobody ever teaches you how to do your job, you don't feel very confident. You don't feel like it's a very important job. So we want to offer our My Friends training. If anyone doesn't have evangelism training, our My Friends training is really tailor-made for this. But if you've got evangelism training, keep doing it. Do more and more of it, I would say. And then the third thing that we need, so a credible message, training and mobilizing everyday people. And then the third thing we need is prayer. It doesn't matter how good the film is, it doesn't matter how good our strategy is. Unless God does something, then this mission will just produce straw and hay and
Yeah, that's very true. And that is something that I think it's not unreasonable to invite all of us, anyone that would listen to this episode, Geoff, to be praying now, to start to be praying into that first of all, the awareness, right across our country that the film is actually coming, that we're moving towards a December 26th date as the release dates, really just praying for that awareness, really praying for that across the nation, that the Christian body would know, about the movie. I know sometimes we think, oh, lots of people know, but we've got to keep praying and keep getting the awareness out there. So please join with us to be praying into that and starting to think how you can use that. Now, Geoff, you talked about that you are going to be releasing some ways that just everyday believers like myself that we can engage with. How would we book a cinema if we wanted to do something like this and start to gather people? What would be the best website? Will that be powertochange.org.au, or would it be jesus.au or jesus.film?
Jesus.film or jesus.au, they go to the same site, is the best place for people to register if they're interested in finding out or receiving regular updates just about the film. If you want to find out about other things that Power to Change offers, like the My Friends training, then powertochange.org.au is the best place to go. But jesus.film is what I keep saying to people. Just look up jesus.film and have a look at what's presented there. There's some short clips, there's some stories, and a place to register and receive some emails that will keep you up to date on what's happening as things progress.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very exciting. And just to let you know today as a listener that we're going to keep an ongoing discussion going with Geoff and from Power to Change Australia about the movie as we move into this and heading towards 2026. So any other thoughts, Geoff, that you want to give us before we finish our chat today? And I look forward to our next chat.
Just to say that 2.5 years lead time seems like a long time, but for most organisations, and churches are no different, it takes time to play and to pray and to plan and to prepare, and so it really, I do feel a sense of urgency to get the word out there and to invite people to be part of it. And it's not just local churches. We've got whole denominations and other organisations across Australia thinking about and preparing for how they can use the film. So if you represent another organisation or are connected to one that has an idea of, oh, we might use the film this way, then please feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you. I feel like Jesus Film Global is giving us a $150 million film, and they're saying, how can you use this in mission in Australia? And I'm saying, so Australia, how do we use this in mission? Australian Church, how do we use this in mission in Australia? Because I don't have all the answers.
Amazing. So fantastic. Really just love everything that you're doing and your attitude, Geoff, to include the Australian Church. We really appreciate that. And I know I've already got ideas in my head of what I usually do with my neighbours and everything around that Christmas time. I'm thinking, oh, okay, I'm going to plan towards this. All right, so we want to send you to jesus.film for all information. And in the show notes, I'll have all the other links right there for you so that you can stay connected with Geoff, with Power to Change Australia and jesus.film. So everything will be there. This is the first of a number of conversations. So I really hope this has been helpful. Help us to spread the awareness. Let people know. Send them a link to either this podcast episode or send them off to jesus.film. But start to talk about it. Start to gossip it out there so that people know. Geoff, it's been absolutely brilliant to have you on the show again. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Tina. Really appreciate your time.